My dad shoved me into his pantry and whispered, "Don't breathe." 3 minutes later, my husband walked into the kitchen carrying apple fritters and a folder. I thought he had come to ask my father for money. Then I watched him crush 2 white pills into my dad's coffee. The mug was brown chipped at the handle with the words "World's Best Dad" fading across the side. My husband stirred the coffee once, twice. Then he smiled like he had just solved a problem. And the worst part was not that Marcus tried to drug my father. The worst part was that my father had already known he was coming. That was why he hid me. That was why the porch light was on. That was why Dad looked less surprised than ready when I arrived at his house at 9:38 on a Tuesday night, with tears still drying on my face, and no idea that the life I had been defending for 11 years was about to confess itself from across a kitchen table. My name is Rachel Bennett. I am 35 years old, a billing supervisor at St. Mercy Community Hospital in Dayton, Ohio. I know insurance codes, payment disputes, past due balances, and the exact tone people use when they are ashamed to say they cannot afford their medical bills. I have spent most of my adult life finding mistakes in numbers. But for 11 years, I missed the mistake sleeping next to me. His name was Marcus Reed. He was my husband. And before that night, I thought betrayal was something loud. A lipstick stain, a hotel receipt, a text message popping up at midnight. I did not know betrayal could sit at your father's kitchen table, compliment his coffee, and call his home dead weight while planning to take it from him. To understand why my father's house mattered, you need to understand what it was. Not a mansion, not a lake house, not one of those rich family properties with iron gates and a name carved into stone. It was a small, yellow bungalow on Maple Street with a crooked mailbox, a cracked driveway, and a front porch my father rebuilt himself after my mother died. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with green tile from the 1970s, a basement that smelled like laundry soap dust and old tools, a backyard with tomato plants, a rusted basketball hoop, and a shed full of screws, nails, extension cords, paint cans, broken handles, and every still useful thing my father had ever refused to throw away. To strangers, it was just an old house in an ordinary neighborhood. To Marcus, it was collateral. To my father, it was 36 years of sore knees, skipped vacations, double shifts, and my mother's last good memories. My dad, Ellis Bennett, bought that house in 1989. He was 29 years old, newly married, and working as a school custodian. Not a glamorous job. Not a job people brag about at class reunions. But it was steady. He opened the elementary school before sunrise. He mopped hallways after children tracked in snow. He cleaned vomit from classroom carpets, fixed broken bathroom locks, shoveled sidewalks, changed light bulbs in the gym, and knew exactly which second-grade teacher cried in her room during lunch because her marriage was falling apart. He was the kind of man people only noticed when something went wrong. And he never complained about that. Work doesn't need applause, he used to say. It needs doing. My mother, Nora, worked part-time at a grocery store bakery. She smelled like vanilla icing and dish soap. She wrote grocery lists on the backs of envelopes and taped my spelling tests to the refrigerator like I had just won a national award. That house was her pride. She painted the kitchen cabinets herself one spring because she said the place needed a little brightness and a little nerve. She planted tulips along the front walkway. She made Dad return a recliner once because she said it looked like a divorced man's throne. After she got sick, she spent most mornings at that kitchen table wrapped in a blue robe, drinking coffee she could barely taste and telling Dad which neighborhood gossip he had missed. The last Thanksgiving she was alive, she was too weak to stand for long, but she still insisted on stirring the gravy. Family tastes better when somebody makes the effort, she told me. I was 27 then, old enough to understand cancer. Not old enough to understand what it steals after the funeral. When Mom died, Dad left the porch light on every night. He said it made the house look less empty. But I knew the truth. He was still expecting her. 3 years after her death, Dad mailed his last mortgage check. He called me at work that afternoon. "Rachel," he said, and his voice cracked like a boy's. "It's done." I drove over after my shift and found him at the kitchen table with the payoff letter in front of him. He had made 2 cups of coffee. One for him, one in Mom's old mug. He tapped the paper once and said, "Your mother wanted one thing for you, a place in this world nobody could push you out of." At the time, I thought he meant inheritance. Now I know he meant dignity. I met Marcus 2 years before that at a hospital fundraiser in October. I was 24, wearing a navy dress I had bought on clearance, standing near the silent auction table, pretending to understand why anyone would bid $200 on a basket of artisanal mustard. Marcus walked up beside me and said, "I'm guessing you're trying to calculate whether mustard can be a personality." I laughed because it was exactly the kind of awkward thought I was having. He was 31, tall, broad-shouldered, dark blonde hair, one dimple clean, boots easy smile. He worked sales for a roofing and gutter company. He said he liked helping homeowners before the big guys scared them into buying things they didn't need. That sounded decent. That sounded American in the way people trust. A man with a truck. A man with calloused hands. A man who shook your father's hand and looked him in the eye. Marcus asked me what I did. When I said medical billing, he did not make the face people usually made. The one that said, "Oh, boring." Instead, he leaned in and said, "So you're the person who figures out what everybody else is too overwhelmed to understand." It was the perfect thing to say. That was Marcus's gift. He did not make you feel beautiful first. He made you feel necessary. Beauty can be replaced. Necessary feels like safety. For 2 years, he was everything a lonely daughter and a grieving father would have trusted. He brought me coffee at work. He remembered I hated carnations because they smelled like funeral homes. He changed Dad's porch light without being asked. He cleaned Dad's gutters before winter. He sat at the kitchen table and let Dad talk about the school district neighborhood potholes and my mother's pie crust, like every word mattered. He called Dad Mr. Bennett until Dad finally said Ellis is fine. Marcus smiled and said, "Yes, sir." Even that sounded respectful. Looking back, I think Dad saw something before I did. Not enough to accuse him, just enough to pause. Dad had spent more than 40 years around people, kids who lied about broken windows, parents who lied about not being drunk at pickup, contractors who lied about repair estimates, principals who lied about budgets. A custodian sees what people drop when they think no one important is watching. Once, a few months before the wedding, Dad and I were washing dishes after Sunday dinner. Marcus had gone outside to take a call. Dad looked through the kitchen window and said, "He smiles before he answers." I laughed. "What does that mean?" Dad shrugged. "Some people smile after they hear good news. Some people smile before they decide what face to wear." I rolled my eyes. "Dad." He dried a plate. "I'm not saying anything." But he was. I just did not want to hear it. Marcus proposed in Dad's backyard under string lights. My father cried. I cried. Marcus cried too. At least I thought he did. Now when I remember that night, I remember how quickly his eyes flicked to Dad before the tear fell, as if checking whether the audience saw it. We married in 2014. Small church wedding. Pulled pork in the fellowship hall. My cousin Denise made cupcakes. Dad walked me down the aisle in his navy suit, the one Mom had picked out before she died. Right before he gave me away, he leaned close and whispered, "You never have to earn love, baby." I thought it was sweet. I did not realize it was a warning. The first year was good. Or maybe I needed it to be good so badly that I edited out anything that did not fit. Marcus was affectionate, funny, ambitious. He made people laugh. He called me a steady girl. He told everyone I was the responsible one, the smart one, the one who kept him grounded. It sounded like praise. But praise can be a leash if someone uses it to assign you a role. I became steady. I became reasonable. I became the woman who forgave late payments, late nights. Strange moods, missing receipts, and stories that changed shape depending on who was listening. Marcus left the roofing company in 2017 to start his own business. Reed Home Solutions. Roofing gutters, siding, small repairs. Real work for regular people, he said. I believed in that. I helped design the logo. I made the first spreadsheet. I tracked expenses. I corrected the grammar on his flyers. For the first year, it almost worked. Then came the requests. Not huge ones. Not at first. $800 for a tool deposit. $1,200 for a supplier who needed quick payment. $500 to pay a crew in cash because some guys don't like checks. I asked questions. Marcus answered with charm, then exhaustion, then hurt. "You don't trust me." That question does terrible things to a wife who wants to be good. So I trusted him. By 2018, Marcus started talking about Dad's house. Not directly, not like a villain in a movie. He did it the way people do when they are testing the locks on a door. At Sunday dinner, he would look around the kitchen and say, "Maple Street is changing. A place like this is worth more than people think." Dad would keep eating. Marcus would continue. You ever think about downsizing, Ellis? This is a lot of house for one man. Dad would say it's 980 square feet. Marcus would laugh. You know what I mean. One night as we drove home, I told him, don't talk to Dad like he's helpless. Marcus kept his eyes on the road. I'm not. You are. I'm thinking ahead. Somebody in this family has to. I hated that sentence. But not enough. A month later, while I was folding laundry, Marcus leaned against the bedroom door and said, your dad has equity just sitting there. I stopped matching socks. What does that mean? He held up both hands. Don't make that face. I'm just saying the house is paid off completely. That's a powerful asset. My father is not an asset. I didn't say he was. You just did. He sighed like I was being emotional on purpose. Rachel, if he let us use the house as a temporary guarantee, I could get a business loan at a decent rate. We could grow. We could stop renting. We could build something. Number. You didn't even think about it. I don't need to, no. His smile stayed in place. Only his eyes changed. A shutter closing. Fine, he said softly. Forget I said anything. And I did. That was one of the most expensive mistakes of my life. I thought because I said no, the conversation had ended. I did not understand that Marcus did not need my yes. He only needed me not to notice him getting someone else's. After that, he became even more helpful to Dad. He stopped by on Wednesdays, then Fridays, then any afternoon I worked late. He brought sandwiches, changed furnace filters, installed grab bars in the bathroom even though Dad said he did not need them. He brought simple forms, senior energy rebates, neighborhood contact sheets, a free roof inspection request, a city repair program flyer. Just signatures, Marcus would say. Boring stuff. I'm saving you a trip. Dad signed some, refused others. I thought it was kindness. I told my coworkers I'm lucky. My husband really shows up for my dad. Maya Patel, my closest friend at the hospital, once raised an eyebrow. Does he show up for your dad, or does he show up when you aren't there? I laughed it off. Maya did not. She had a way of asking one question and letting it sit in the room until you either answered it or built a wall around it. I built the wall. By 2020, Marcus's mother, Shirley Reed, had become a regular shadow in our marriage. Shirley was a widow, or at least she wore widowhood like a crown. Her husband had died 20 years earlier, and she had turned grief into authority. She was small, neat, always in lipstick, always carrying a purse with tissues, mints, and church bulletins folded inside. She had a voice soft enough to make cruelty sound like concern. At family dinners, she would pat my hand and say, Rachel, you're such a blessing. Marcus needed a steady woman. His dreams are bigger than most people know how to hold. Then she would sigh. Of course, big dreams cost money. For years, I helped her. $300 one month, $400 the next. A grocery card, an electric bill, a pharmacy copay. Marcus said she was proud, and I should not embarrass her by asking questions. She raised me alone, he said. I owe her everything, so I gave. Because that is what I thought family meant. Later, I learned Shirley's rent was partly paid by her sister. Her prescriptions were covered. Her church delivered groceries twice a month. The money I gave her did not keep her lights on. It kept Marcus's lies breathing. But I did not know that yet. All I knew was that Shirley looked at me like I was useful. And when I stopped being useful, she looked at me like I was ungrateful. The family isolation began slowly. A missed invitation here. A group text there. Marcus's cousin had a baby shower and everyone said, we thought you were working. Shirley hosted Marcus's birthday dinner and posted photos the next day. Long table, fried chicken, macaroni salad, sweet tea. Marcus at the head of the table. My chair was not empty. It was gone. When I asked him about it, he kissed my forehead. Baby, it was last minute. Besides, you hate loud family stuff. I hate being forgotten. He laughed. Nobody forgot you. Then Shirley commented under the photo, nothing stronger than family standing together. A woman from church replied, praying for all the wives who learn to support their husband's calling. I read that sentence 6 times. Then I closed the app and made dinner. That was the kind of wife I had become. A woman who swallowed insult and called it peace. Marcus started saying things that should have made me leave the room. Small things. Sharp things. Your dad still writes checks like it's 1995. Ellis doesn't need a whole house, he needs supervision. Sentiment is expensive, Rachel. Once when Dad forgot where he had put his reading glasses, Marcus chuckled and said, see, that's how it starts. Dad heard him, So did I. I said, don't. Marcus lifted both hands. I'm joking. Dad smiled politely, but something in his face closed. After that, he stopped leaving Marcus alone in the office room where Mom's old desk sat. At the time, I barely noticed. Now I think Dad had begun counting. Not numbers. Moments. When you are dealing with someone like Marcus, the first evidence is not paperwork. It is the feeling that every kindness has a hook. The first real crack came in the hospital cafeteria. Rainy Thursday. Bad soup. Maya and I sat at a corner table while I complained about money. Not seriously. Just the tired, ordinary complaint of a woman who could not understand why two incomes never seemed enough. I don't get it, I said. We don't live fancy. We rent. I pack lunch. Dad taught me to save ketchup packets like the depression might come back. Maya looked at my phone. My banking app was open. She leaned closer. Can I ask something? Sure. Why are there so many cash withdrawals? I almost turned the screen away. I did not. She scrolled. Her expression did not change, which somehow scared me more. These are patterned. What does that mean? Same range, same days, usually Thursday or Friday, always under 900. That's not random spending. Marcus pays crews sometimes. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. I'm not paid to be convinced. I'm paid to notice patterns. I took the phone back. I wanted to be angry. Anger would have been easier than fear. That night, after Marcus fell asleep on the couch with a basketball game still glowing across his face, I opened our accounts on my laptop. I told myself I was being responsible. Then I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I stopped lying to myself. There were withdrawals going back months, hardware store charges in towns where Marcus had no jobs, restaurant charges during hours he said he was with Dad, a repeating transfer to SR household support, Shirley, and another recurring payment I did not recognize. Bluebird Beauty and Brow. The name sat on the screen like a bruise. Bluebird Beauty and Brow. I searched it. A small salon between a laundromat and a vape shop in Riverside. Bright blue sign. White curtains. Flower boxes. Owner Tessa Lane. 32 years old. The next day during lunch I drove past it. I told myself I just wanted to see the building. Tessa was inside laughing with a customer. Long black hair. Perfect nails. A tattoo of a bird on her wrist. She looked young in the way confident women look young not by age but by certainty. I sat in my car across the street for 12 minutes. Marcus had transferred nearly $19,000 to that salon over 18 months. When you discover another woman, people expect drama. Screaming, broken dishes, clothes thrown onto a lawn. I did none of that. I drove back to work and finished reviewing patient payment plans. That is what shock can look like in an adult woman with a job. Not collapse. Function. The collapse waits until your body has time. Maya found me in the supply room at 4:20 p.m., standing in front of printer paper with my coat still on. What happened? I said, there's a woman. Maya closed the door. Do you want to go home? Number. What do you want? My answer came out colder than I expected. I want to know everything. That was the first day I stopped being Marcus's wife and became what I had always been at work. A woman who follows numbers until they stop pretending. Over the next few weeks, the truth came in pieces. Marcus had borrowed against his work truck. He had maxed out 2 business cards. He owed money to a private lender named Clint Varner, a man who called himself a small business consultant and worked above a pawn shop. Marcus had promised Clint collateral, not our home. We did not own one. Not his truck, already tied up. Not his equipment. Half of it was leased. He had promised something cleaner, something paid off, something with an old man's name on it. My father's house. I still did not confront him. People ask why women do not confront men the moment they know. Here's the truth. Because knowing is not one moment. It is a hallway. You open one door and think this is bad, then another. And it is worse, then another. And behind that one is your mother-in-law holding a flashlight, then another. And behind that one is another woman wearing the future you paid for. You do not scream immediately because some part of you is still hoping the hallway ends before it reaches your childhood home. It did not. In November, Dad called me after dinner. His voice was careful. Too careful. Rachel, did Marcus talk to you about the house again? I sat up straight. Why? He came by this afternoon. What did he want? He brought papers. My throat tightened. What kind? Said it was for a senior home improvement grant. Weatherproofing basement stairs, porch railing. Said it could save me money. Did you sign? Number. I closed my eyes. Dad continued. I asked if I could keep the papers overnight and read them. He didn't like that. What did he do? There was a pause. He smiled. I knew exactly what Dad meant. Marcus had many smiles. A charming smile. An embarrassed smile. A public smile. A bedroom smile. A church smile. And then there was the thin one. The one without warmth. The one that meant he had moved you from person to obstacle. What did he say? Dad's voice lowered. He said, Ellis, don't make Rachel's life harder because you're sentimental about drywall. Drywall. My mother's kitchen. My childhood bedroom. The porch where Dad taught me to ride a bike. Drywall. Dad, I'm all right. No, you're not. No, he said softly, I'm not. That was the first time my father sounded old to me. Not weak. Wounded. There is a difference. Weakness means you cannot stand. Wounded means you are standing while something bleeds. 2 days later, Shirley asked me to lunch at a Cracker Barrel by the highway. She said she missed her daughter-in-law. I went because I wanted to see what she knew. She wore a lavender sweater, pearl earrings, and the silver cross Marcus had bought her with my credit card 3 Christmases earlier. She ordered chicken and dumplings. For 10 minutes, she talked about a woman at church who had lost her way by divorcing a man during a season of pressure. Then she looked at me. Marcus tells me you've been tense. I folded my napkin in my lap. Did he? He is under tremendous stress. So am I. Shirley smiled sadly. That smile women use when they are about to say something cruel and call it wisdom. Honey, your job is steady. Marcus is trying to build legacy. There was that word. Legacy. Men like Marcus loved that word. It made greed sound holy. What legacy, I asked. The company, the family name, the chance to become something more than ordinary. My father is ordinary, is that bad? She sighed. Ellis already had his life. I stared at her. She continued gently. Marcus is still trying to build his. The waitress came to refill our iced tea. Neither of us spoke until she left. Then Shirley leaned forward. Your father's house is sitting there doing nothing. It is sheltering my father. It could be helping the living instead of worshiping the dead. My body went cold. My mother lived in that house. I know, dear, and God rest Nora. But a good wife knows when memories are becoming chains. I wanted to throw iced tea in her face. Instead, I asked, does Marcus know you talk like this? Her eyes hardened. Marcus knows I understand him. And I don't? You love him, but you make him feel small. There it was. The family gospel. Marcus lied because I questioned him. Marcus hid money because I was too careful. Marcus wanted Dad's house because I was too sentimental. Marcus looked elsewhere because I made him feel small. Shirley reached across the table and touched my hand. A good wife does not audit her husband. She covers him. I pulled my hand away. I work in billing, Shirley. Auditing is how I find out who's stealing. Her face changed. Just for a second. Then the church voice returned. You need to decide whether you are Marcus's wife or Ellis's little girl. I stood. I'm both. That may be the problem. No, I said. The problem is that your son thinks love means access. I paid the check. Not because I owed her lunch. Because I wanted the receipt. That night Marcus came home late. He smelled faintly of cologne I did not own. He looked at the empty stove. What's for dinner? I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold. I don't know. He blinked. You don't know. Number. I've been on my feet all day. So have I. His face shifted. Not much. Enough. Then he smiled softly and walked over to kiss the top of my head. Okay, bad day. I'll order pizza. I let him. We sat across from each other while he ate 3 slices and talked about a roof estimate in Kettering. I watched his mouth move. I thought about Tessa. I thought about Shirley saying my father already had his life. I thought about Dad saying Marcus smiled. And I realized something I did not like about myself. I no longer wanted Marcus to confess. I wanted him to underestimate me. Sometimes survival begins the moment you stop begging someone to become honest and start letting him reveal how dishonest he already is. December came cold. Marcus visited Dad more often. I knew because Mrs. Alvarez texted me. Mrs. Alvarez lived next door to Dad, 72 years old, retired public librarian, 2 cats, doorbell camera, moral confidence of a woman who had shushed teenagers for 35 years. Her text said, "Your husband at your dad's again. Everything okay?" I replied, "Please let me know if anything seems odd." She wrote back, "He parks crooked. Then, and he never brings your dad the donuts he likes." That almost made me laugh. Almost. Dad and I began speaking in code because Marcus had started reading my messages. I knew because he mentioned something Maya had texted me that I had never told him. So Dad and I stopped texting plainly. If Dad wrote need help with the bird feeder, it meant Marcus had visited. If I asked, how are the tomatoes, it meant, did he bring papers? If Dad replied still green, it meant no. If he replied one red, it meant yes. On December 18th, Dad texted, bird feeder again, one red. I called him from my car. What happened? He brought a man with him. What man? Brown coat. Polite. Said he helped small businesses with financing. Clint. I knew without proof. What did Marcus say? Dad's voice went flat. He said if I cared about your future, I'd stop acting like a scared old man. I gripped the steering wheel. Dad continued. Then he said the house would belong to you someday anyway. So I was only speeding up a blessing. A blessing. People who steal from family love spiritual language. It makes theft sound like destiny. Did you sign anything? Number. Dad. I know, baby. His voice softened. I know. That night, lying beside Marcus in the dark, I listened to him breathe. I wondered how many nights I had slept next to a stranger. Then I corrected myself. He was not a stranger. A stranger would not know how I took my coffee. A stranger would not know my father's porch code. A stranger would not know my mother's favorite hymn. A stranger could not hurt me like this. Marcus was not dangerous because I did not know him. He was dangerous because I did. On January 6th, the hospital billing system flagged a vendor account connected to Reed Home Solutions. It was not directly my department. I should not have opened it, but by then fear had become instinct. There were unpaid supply invoices, returned payments, a note from a finance office, owner seeking collateral-backed restructuring, collateral address listed, 114 Maple Street, my father's address. The world went quiet, not silent, quiet. Like my body had stepped away from the noise around me. I closed the file. I put on my coat. I drove to Dad's house. I did not call. I did not text. I did not rehearse what I would say. For 11 years, I had explained Marcus to other people. He's stressed. He's ambitious. He's proud. He's under pressure. He means well. That night, I had no explanation left, only the shaking certainty that if I went home first, I might lose the courage to say the truth out loud. When I turned onto Maple Street, Dad's porch light was on. Always on. I parked behind his truck and walked up the steps. Before I knocked, the door opened. Dad stood there in a flannel shirt and house slippers. For half a second, his face did something strange. Not surprise. Recognition. Like I had arrived at the exact minute he feared and hoped I would. Then he saw my face. His own changed. He grabbed my wrist, pulled me inside, locked the door, and whispered, "Pantry. Now. Don't make a sound." I stared. "Dad, what?" "Rachel," he whispered. "Please." So I went. The pantry was narrow, smelling of paper towels, dust, canned peaches, and the strawberry jam Dad still bought because Mom liked it. I squeezed between the broom and the shelves. Dad pulled the door almost shut, leaving a thin slice of light. Then he stepped away. The house became all sounds. Kitchen clock, refrigerator hum, Dad's slippers, my breathing. 3 minutes later, headlights swept across the window. A car door closed outside. Dad walked to the front door. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened. Marcus's voice came warm and easy. "Ellis, you still awake?" "Good, we need to finish what we started." Dad sounded confused. "Marcus, what brings you by so late?" "Just checking on you." Footsteps entered. I knew those footsteps. For 11 years, I had heard them in hallways, grocery stores, church aisles, hotel rooms, on cheap vacations, and our rented kitchen at midnight. But through the crack of a pantry door, they sounded different. Not like a husband coming home, like a man coming to collect. Marcus stepped into the kitchen carrying a white bakery box and a folder. "Brought apple fritters," he said. "Your favorite." Dad blinked slowly. "My favorite." "Sure, you told me." Dad's favorite was not apple fritters. It was plain glazed donuts from Stan's cut in half and eaten with black coffee. Marcus had never bothered to remember. Dad nodded like a confused old man. "Right, apple." Marcus smiled. Not kindly, successfully. He thought Dad was slipping. He thought the performance was real. That was when I understood my father had been acting for longer than one night. Marcus sat at the kitchen table. Dad lowered himself across from him with a slight tremble in his hand. Fake, convincing, painful to watch. How have you been feeling? Marcus asked. Oh, Dad said, looking down. Some days are clear, some days are foggy. Foggy. He was feeding Marcus exactly what Marcus wanted to hear. Marcus leaned forward. That's normal at your age. Nothing to be embarrassed about. At your age. Dad was 67. He still climbed ladders when I begged him not to. He still carried mulch bags 2 at a time. He still remembered the names of children who had attended his school 25 years earlier. But Marcus needed him small, so he spoke smallness into the room. Marcus opened the folder. Paper slid across the table. Now this is simple. You don't need to worry about every detail. Dad picked up the top page. His hands trembled again. What is it? It lets me take care of some repairs, some financing, some family planning. Make sure Rachel doesn't get stuck with a mess later. Dad said Rachel doesn't know about this. Marcus sighed. Rachel worries too much. She's my daughter. And my wife. His voice sharpened on wife, then softened again. I love her, Ellis. But she gets emotional about you, about this house, about her mother. She can't see the big picture. The big picture. Greed loves to call itself vision. Dad asked what picture. Marcus leaned back. The house is worth money. Real money. And you're sitting on it like it's a scrapbook. I closed my eyes. A scrapbook. My childhood. My mother's last Thanksgiving. My father's life. A scrapbook. Marcus continued. Read. Home Solutions can grow. I can build something Rachel benefits from. We can stop renting. We can finally be a family with a name that means something. Dad's voice was quiet. My name means something. Marcus paused. Then he laughed. Not warmly. Of course it does. But Bennett is a school janitor's name. Reed can be a company name. The words hit the kitchen like broken glass. Dad did not move. I gripped the pantry shelf until a can of peaches rattled. Marcus did not hear. Dad did. His eyes flicked once toward the pantry, then back. My wife liked my name, Dad said. Your wife isn't here. The house went still. Even the refrigerator seemed to quiet. Dad folded his hands. You should not speak of Nora that way. I'm speaking practically. No, Dad said. You're speaking like a man who thinks dead people can't hear. Marcus's chair creaked. The mask slipped. Listen to me, he said. I have carried Rachel for 11 years. I have carried this family's future while everybody else clings to feelings. I am tired of asking nicely. Dad asked, what happens if I don't sign? Marcus leaned in. Then Rachel finds out her sweet old dad is the reason her husband's company collapses. Her credit gets ruined, and she has nowhere to go but back into this dusty little house with you. I covered my mouth. Marcus continued, each word quieter and uglier than the last. And trust me, Ellis, when that happens, I'll make sure she knows you chose your pride over her life. Dad's hands stayed folded. You'd tell her that. I'll tell her whatever gets her to stop looking at me like I'm the disappointment. There it was. The sentence that ended my marriage. Not the affair, not the money, not even the house. That sentence. Because in it I heard exactly what I was to him. Not a wife, not a partner, not a woman he loved. A mirror that had stopped reflecting the man he wanted to see. Dad said softly, Would you like coffee? Marcus exhaled, annoyed by the change. Sure. Dad stood slowly and moved to the counter. He took down 2 mugs. One blue, one brown. The brown one was his. The old Father's Day mug I painted when I was 8. World's best dad. Crooked letters. Faded paint. A childish gift that had somehow survived 3 decades and 1 dishwasher too many. Marcus stood. I'll grab the cream. He moved behind Dad. That was when I saw it. Through the thin crack of the pantry door, I watched Marcus slip a small plastic bag from his coat pocket. Not a prescription bottle. Not something obvious. A little bag with 2 white tablets inside. He glanced toward Dad. Dad had turned to fill the coffee pot. Marcus folded the pills in a napkin and crushed them under the heel of his hand. Quick! Practiced. Quiet. Then he tipped the powder into the brown mug. My father's mug. My lungs stopped working. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kick the pantry door open. I wanted to hit Marcus with the broom until every lie fell out of his mouth. But Dad's command held me in place. Don't make a sound. Marcus stirred the powder into the mug. Once. Twice. Then he put the spoon in the sink and stepped back just as Dad turned around. Dad poured the coffee. Brown mug. Blue mug. Steam rose between them. Marcus watched the brown mug like a man watching a door unlock. Dad carried both mugs to the table. His fingers touched the handle. I had 1 second to choose. If I screamed, Marcus would know I was there. If I stayed silent, my father might drink whatever Marcus had put in that cup. Dad lifted the mug. My hand flew to my mouth. I bit the side of my finger so hard pain shot up my jaw. Dad paused. Just barely. His eyes did not move to me. But something in his face changed. Maybe he saw Marcus's reflection in the dark kitchen window. Maybe he noticed the spoon. Maybe he heard my breath catch. Maybe fathers hear their daughters even through pantry doors. Dad sniffed the coffee and grimaced. You know what he said slowly? My stomach's been off all day. Marcus's smile tightened. It's just coffee. I'll get water. Dad stood, carried the brown mug to the sink and set it down untouched. Not poured out, not thrown away. Set down. Then he filled a glass with tap water. Marcus watched him with eyes so flat I hardly recognized him. You're making this difficult, he said. Dad took a sip of water. Old men do that. Marcus stared, then laughed once. Mean, tired, uncovered. You know, Ellis, I used to respect you. Dad looked at him. No, you didn't. What? You respected what I had. For the first time all night, Marcus had no immediate answer. Dad continued. You came around here for years with sandwiches and a toolbox. You fixed my porch rail. You changed my furnace filter. You helped carry Nora's sewing machine to the basement. I thought maybe you loved my daughter enough to love where she came from. Marcus's mouth tightened. But you never loved this house, Dad said. You measured it. Marcus stood. The chair scraped loudly. You're confused. Number. You forget things. I forget where I put my glasses. I do not forget when a man is circling my home like a buzzard. Marcus pointed at him. You were a janitor, Ellis. Stop acting like some kind of family king. Dad stood then, slowly, straight-backed. No tremble, no shuffle. Just my father, 6 feet tall, 67 years old, with work-worn hands and eyes steady enough to hold up a house. That janitor's name fed my daughter, he said. That janitor's name buried my wife with dignity. That janitor's name paid for this roof without stealing from anybody. So be careful what you call small, Marcus. Some small men build, some big dreamers only take. I began crying in the pantry, silently, because Dad had been alone with this truth longer than I knew. Marcus's face reddened. You think Rachel will choose you? Dad said she already did. Marcus laughed. She's not even here. Dad looked directly at the pantry. Come out, baby! I opened the door. Marcus turned. The expression on his face when he saw me is something I will never forget. Not guilt, not shame, not even fear. Annoyance. Like I had interrupted a meeting. Like I had walked into a room where my own life was being discussed and failed to understand I was not invited. Rachel, he said. Just my name. Soft. Warning. I stepped into the kitchen. My finger was bleeding where I had bitten it. My face was wet. But my voice did not shake. What was in the coffee? Marcus stared at me. What? The coffee. What did you put in my father's mug? His eyes flicked to the sink. 1 second. Enough. I didn't put anything in his coffee. I walked to the sink, picked up the brown mug and held it out. Then drink it. Silence. Dad stood beside me, not touching me. Just there. A wall. Marcus's jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic. Drink it. You don't know what you saw. I saw my husband crush pills into my father's coffee. Marcus looked at Dad, then at me. The mask slipped completely. You stupid woman. There it was. Not honey, not charm, not forehead kisses. Truth in plain clothes. You stupid, ungrateful woman, he said. Do you have any idea how close I was to fixing everything? I asked. Everything you broke. I built us a future. You built Tessa a salon. His face changed. Real fear, finally. Not because he had hurt me. Because I knew the name. Who told you that? Maya helped me see the accounts. His lip curled. That nosy little hospital girl. She noticed what your wife was too tired to admit. Marcus stepped toward me. Dad stepped forward too. Marcus stopped. He said Tessa believed in me. Tessa cashed my money. She respected my ambition. She got the version of you that still lied well. His face twisted. You never understood what it takes to build something. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because the lie was too old to scare me anymore. I watched my father build a home on a custodian's pay. I watched my mother build a family while cancer took her strength. I watched myself rebuild your credit twice while you called it temporary stress. I know what building looks like, Marcus. I stepped closer. What you do is take. For a moment, the kitchen was silent. Then Marcus changed faces. I watched him do it. The anger softened. The shoulders dropped. The voice became intimate. Rach, he said. Baby, this got out of hand. I hated that word then. Baby. As if making me smaller would make me quiet. You tried to drug my father. No, I didn't. It was something to calm him down. He's been anxious. Dad gave a dry laugh. Marcus ignored him. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I understand you brought papers, insulted my dead mother, threatened my father, and put something in his coffee. His eyes hardened. You can't prove any of that. Dad reached behind the bread box. Marcus frowned. Dad pulled out an old black phone. My old phone, actually. The one I had given him when I upgraded. He tapped the screen. Marcus's voice filled the kitchen. Clear, sharp, recorded. Then Rachel finds out her sweet old dad is the reason her husband's company collapses. Marcus went pale. Dad tapped again. I'll tell her whatever gets her to stop looking at me like I'm the disappointment. Dad stopped the recording. The silence after that was heavier than the words. Marcus stared at the phone, then at Dad, then at me. You recorded me, Dad said, in my house. You planned this. No, Dad said. You planned this. I just stopped pretending I didn't see it. Marcus tried everything after that. Anger, bargaining, apology, tears. The tears were the worst. Not because they moved me, because they were so practiced. He sat at the kitchen table with his head in his hands and said, I'm sick, Rachel. I said nothing. I got in over my head. Nothing. You know me. You know I'm not a monster. That was when I finally answered. No, Marcus. I know you're not a monster. He looked up hopeful. Monsters are simple, I said. You're a man who made choices and called them pressure. His face collapsed. Or pretended to. I no longer cared which. Dad called Mrs. Alvarez first. Not the police first. Mrs. Alvarez, because Dad was still Dad, and before anything official happened, he wanted another human being in the house. She came over in a winter coat and slippers, carrying a flashlight like a weapon. She looked at Marcus, then at the brown mug, then at me. I knew he parked crooked for a reason, she said. That was the first time I laughed that night. A broken laugh, but real. Then Dad called Ben Howard, a retired sheriff from church. Ben came quietly. No sirens. No drama. He listened. He looked at the mug. He listened to the recording. He told Marcus to leave the property. Now, Ben said. Marcus looked at me. You're really doing this? I looked at the man I had married. The coat I bought him. The mouth that had kissed me. The eyes that had watched my father almost drink from that mug. I'm not doing this to you, I said. I'm finally stopping what you were doing to us. Marcus left. The door closed. And I stood in my father's kitchen shaking so hard I had to hold the counter. Dad turned to me. His face was tired, older, wounded. I'm sorry, he said. That broke me. Not Marcus, not the money, not Tessa, not Shirley. My father apologizing for being targeted. I crossed the kitchen and wrapped my arms around him. No, I said into his flannel shirt. You don't apologize for someone else's greed. He held me like he had when I was little. One hand on the back of my head. One arm around my shoulders. And for the first time in months, I cried like someone safe enough to fall apart. The next morning, Marcus sent 31 texts before 8 a.m. Baby, please. You misunderstood. Your dad is confused. Don't let Maya poison you. Tessa means nothing. I was trying to protect us. Call me or I'm coming over. Then the tone changed. You'll regret embarrassing me. You think your dad can save you? You have no idea what I know. Then back again. I love you. I'm scared. Rachel, answer me. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. I forwarded everything to Maya and turned my phone off. Dad made pancakes. That sounds too ordinary for the morning after your marriage ends. But life is rude that way. Coffee still brews. Trash still needs to go out. Your father still asks if you want blueberries in the batter because he does not know what else to do with his love. I sat at the kitchen table in yesterday's clothes. Dad set a plate in front of me. I stared at it. I don't know how to be divorced, I said. Dad sat across from me. You don't have to know today. I don't know how to be alone. You're not alone. I don't know how to tell people. Tell the truth in the amount you can survive. That sentence stayed with me. Tell the truth in the amount you can survive. For the first few days, survival looked like sleep. Then coffee. Then showers. Then phone calls. Then lists. Maya came over with a tote bag full of folders, a laptop, and the expression of a woman ready to go to war with a spreadsheet. She hugged Dad first. then me. Then she looked at the kitchen table and said, "Okay, we start with what we know, not what we feel. What we know, that saved me. Because feelings came in waves, but facts stayed still. We made columns, dates, amounts, names, explanations Marcus gave, what actually happened, cash withdrawals, payments to Shirley, Bluebird Beauty and Brow, collateral notes, texts, the recording, the mug, the bakery box receipt from the night he came over because of course Marcus had paid with our joint card. Maya never once said I told you. That is how you know someone loves you. They do not use your pain as proof of their intelligence. 3 days later, Shirley came to Dad's house. She wore a cream coat, church shoes, and the face of a mother who had decided her son was the victim of consequences. Dad opened the door but did not invite her in. I stood behind him in the hallway. "Ellis," she said, "I need to speak with my daughter-in-law." Dad replied, "Rachel can hear you from there." Shirley looked at me. "Honey, this has gone far enough." I almost admired her. The confidence, the nerve, the ability to stand on my father's porch after helping her son bleed us dry and talk like she was there to restore peace. "Marcus is not well," she said. "He has been under terrible strain." I said he tried to drug my father. Her lips tightened. "Allegedly." Dad moved to close the door. I touched his arm. "Number." I wanted to hear her. Not because she could convince me, because I needed to see the whole shape of what I had married into. Shirley lowered her voice. "A wife's duty is not to destroy her husband when he stumbles. A stumble is forgetting an anniversary. This was not a stumble. You enjoyed the dream too, Rachel." I blinked. "What?" "The idea of being married to a successful man, the compliments, the nice dinners, the way people looked at you beside him. That was another trick. Find the smallest human vanity in someone and turn it into permission for your cruelty. I said you took money from me. I accepted help. You passed it to Marcus. I helped my son. With my money. Family money." Dad muttered, "There it is." I kept my eyes on Shirley. "You sat at my table and talked about choosing between groceries and medicine." Her chin lifted. "You have no idea what it means to raise a son alone." "No," I said. "But I know what it means to be used by a mother who thinks her son's ambition matters more than another woman's safety." For the first time, Shirley looked truly angry. Not sad, not pious, angry. Marcus deserved better than a woman who made him feel small. I smiled, a small, tired smile. Surely a man who needs to steal an old man's house to feel big was never big to begin with. Dad made a sound behind me, half cough, half laugh. Shirley's eyes filled with tears. But by then, I had learned something about tears. Some tears ask for compassion. Some tears demand surrender. I no longer confused the two. She left without blessing us. A week later, I went to Bluebird Beauty and Brow. Maya offered to come. I said no. Not because I was brave. Because I needed to look at Tessa without an audience. The salon smelled like acetone vanilla candles and expensive shampoo. Tessa stood behind the counter in a black sweater, her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail. She recognized me immediately. That told me enough. "You're Rachel," she said. "And you're Tessa." The customer in the chair looked between us with open curiosity. Tessa asked her assistant to finish the appointment and led me to a small back room lined with boxes of nail polish. "I didn't know," she said before I could speak. I almost laughed. "Which part?" Her eyes filled. I braced myself for performance. But Tessa surprised me. She did not defend him. She did not call him misunderstood. She sat on a stool and placed both hands in her lap. "I knew he was married," she said. "I didn't know about your father. I didn't know where the money came from. He told me you two were separated in everything but paperwork." "Did you believe that?" She looked down. I wanted to. That answer was honest enough to hurt. "He said you controlled the money," she continued, "that you treated him like a child, that you didn't understand his vision." His vision. Of course. Marcus handed that word out like candy. I asked, "Did he ask you to sign anything?" Her face changed too quickly. My stomach dropped. "What?" She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "He said it was temporary. For business credit. He said when Reed Home Solutions landed a bigger contract, he'd clear it." Inside was a loan agreement. Tessa's name. Marcus listed as business reference. Clint Varner's company. $42,000. Tessa was not just the mistress. She was the backup plan. If Marcus went down, Clint could go after her too. She whispered, "I'm so stupid." "No," I said, surprising both of us. She looked at me. "You were useful to him. That's different." Her eyes spilled over. I did not hug her. I was not that generous yet, but I did say make copies. Give one to someone you trust. Don't meet Marcus alone. She nodded. As I stood to leave, she said, "Why are you helping me?" I paused at the door. "I'm not helping you. I'm refusing to let him write another woman's ending." That was the first moment I felt something like strength. Not loud strength, not revenge strength, a quieter kind, the kind that simply refuses to become what hurt it. The family found out on a Sunday. Of course they did. Family disasters love Sunday afternoons. Shirley hosted dinner after church. I was not invited. I knew because she posted a photo on Facebook. Long table, fried chicken, macaroni salad, sweet tea, cousins, aunts, kids with paper plates. Marcus sat at the head of the table, smiling. Caption, nothing stronger than families standing together. My chair was not empty. Again, it was gone. In the corner of the photo on Shirley's kitchen counter, I saw a folder. Bluebird Beauty and Brow. I do not know why that was the thing that did it. Not the coffee, not the house, not the texts. That photo, that staged smiling public rewriting of the story, while proof of what they had done, sat beside a coconut cake. I turned the phone toward Dad. He put on his reading glasses, then took them off. "Well," he said, "I guess we're going to Sunday dinner." Maya drove. Dad sat in the back seat, calm as church bells. I sat in the passenger seat, holding a folder of copies. Not everything, just enough. Enough is a powerful word. People think truth needs to arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives with 4 printed pages and a woman who no longer asks permission. When we knocked, Shirley opened the door. Her smile vanished. "Rachel." "Hi, Shirley." Marcus appeared behind her. His face hardened. "You shouldn't be here." Dad stepped into view. "This is family, isn't it?" No one moved. Inside, conversations died one by one. Forks stopped. Children were sent to the living room. The adults gathered in Shirley's dining room with the awkward hunger of people who smell scandal and pretend they smell concern. Marcus pulled me aside. "Don't do this here," he whispered. I looked at him. "You made it public. I posted nothing about you. You posted a lie with my chair missing." His jaw flexed. "You're being emotional." That word used to work. Not anymore. I'm being specific. I walked to the end of the dining table. Shirley said, "This is inappropriate." Dad said, "So was the coffee." A murmur moved through the room. Marcus snapped, "Ellis is confused." Dad looked at the relatives. I was confused for about 5 minutes in 1998 when Rachel tried to convince me a boy band CD counted as educational material. Other than that, I'm pretty clear. Someone coughed. Maya stood by the doorway. Small, quiet, immovable. I placed the first page on the table. Over 9 years, I gave Shirley Reed more than $31,000 because she told me she was struggling. Shirley went white. I placed the second page down. Within days of most payments, similar amounts went to Marcus. Marcus said, "That proves nothing." I nodded. By itself, maybe not. Third page. Over 18 months, Marcus transferred marital savings to Bluebird Beauty and Brow. Aunt Linda whispered, "What is that?" A cousin looked down. Someone else looked at Marcus. People knew. Of course they knew. Families often know the affair before the wife does. They just call silence not getting involved. I placed the fourth page down. A financing inquiry tied to Reed Home Solutions listed my father's home as collateral without his permission. Marcus stepped toward me. Maya moved in front of him. "Back up," she said. He laughed sharply. "What are you, her bodyguard?" Maya looked him up and down. "No, I'm the woman who knows where all the numbers are buried." That shut him up. Then Dad pulled out the old phone. Marcus's face changed. "Don't." Dad pressed play. Marcus's voice filled Shirley's dining room. Then Rachel finds out her sweet old dad is the reason her husband's company collapses. The room froze. The recording continued. "I'll tell her whatever gets her to stop looking at me like I'm the disappointment." Shirley sat down slowly. Like her knees had emptied. A cousin muttered Marcus. Marcus lunged for the phone. Ben Howard stepped out from the hallway. I had not known he was there. Dad had invited him. Of course he had. Ben said, "That's enough." Marcus stopped. His face reddened. "You set me up." I looked at him. "No, we finally let you speak without cleaning it up afterward." Then the doorbell rang. Everyone turned. Shirley whispered, "Who is that?" Maya opened the door. Tessa stood on the porch. Black coat, no makeup, a manila envelope in one hand. Marcus looked like the floor had opened beneath him. Tessa, he said, go home. She walked in anyway. There are moments when a room realizes the story is larger than it thought. This was one of them. Tessa placed her envelope on the table. He used me too, she said. Marcus snapped, don't. She pulled a key from her pocket, a small brass key on a bluebird keychain. Then she looked at me. I changed the locks at the salon this morning. His stuff is in 2 trash bags by the back door. She dropped the key on the table. It landed near my wedding ring, because I had taken it off by then. I do not remember deciding to. One moment it was on my finger, the next I was sliding it off. The small sound it made against Shirley's polished dining table was louder than I expected. Marcus stared at it, then at me. You'll come back. I shook my head. Number. You don't know how to be without me. That almost landed. Because a month earlier it would have been true. I did not know how to be without him. But not knowing is not the same as not surviving. I know how to go to work, I said. I know how to pay bills. I know how to make coffee. I know how to sit with my father on the porch. I know how to tell the truth. That is enough for today. Shirley began crying. Rachel, please, this is still a family. I turned to her. Number family protects people. This protected Marcus. No one answered, because deep down they knew the difference. One of Marcus's uncles pushed back from the table. He was a quiet man named Robert who had once let Marcus use his name as a business reference. He looked at Marcus and said, "Don't ever put my name on anything again." That was the first crack. Then another cousin said, "I told you something was wrong with that Riverside account." Another said, "You said Rachel knew." Marcus looked around the room searching for the version of family that had always covered him. It was gone. Not because they suddenly became brave, because the recording made silence expensive. That is not perfect justice, but it is real life. Sometimes people do not choose truth because they are noble. Sometimes they choose it because the lie is finally too public to carry. Marcus turned to me one last time. You think you're better than me? No, I said. He waited. I continued. I think I'm done making myself smaller so you can feel taller. That was the closest thing to revenge I ever needed to say. But life, generous for once, gave me a little more. In the weeks that followed, Marcus lost the thing he loved most. Not me, not Tessa, not Shirley. His image. 2 customers canceled jobs after hearing concerns about his financing. A supplier demanded payment up front. Robert withdrew his reference. Ben quietly advised 3 church members not to let Marcus near their elderly parents' homes with paperwork. Shirley stopped sitting in the front pew for a while. When she returned, no one asked her to lead the women's prayer circle. Tessa reopened the salon under a smaller sign with no bluebird logo. I never became friends with her. This is not that kind of story. But 6 months later, I received a plain envelope in the mail. Inside was a cashier's check for $2,000 and a note. It was not enough, I know that. But it is the first clean money I have had in years. Tessa. I deposited it into Dad's account for porch repairs. Marcus sold his truck, not the work truck. The black pickup he loved, the one he washed every Sunday while I cleaned the kitchen. Mrs. Alvarez saw it being towed. She texted Dad. Truck leaving, finally parked straight. Dad laughed so hard he had to sit down. Shirley never apologized. Not really. She sent one text. I hope someday you understand a mother's heart. I wrote back. I hope someday you understand another woman had one too. Then I blocked her. Marcus kept trying. Emails with subject lines like closure, voicemails at midnight, flowers on Dad's porch. Dad threw the flowers away and kept the vase. Good glass, he said. That was Dad. Practical even in heartbreak. The months after were not clean. I moved into Dad's spare room for a while. At first I was ashamed. 35 years old, sleeping beneath the same ceiling as my father, folding hospital scrubs on a chair in my childhood bedroom. Then one morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and heard Dad singing badly in the kitchen. Shame loosened its grip. Home is not failure. Home is where you are not required to perform being fine. Maya came over twice a week at first, sometimes with food, sometimes with folders, sometimes just to sit. Mrs. Alvarez brought soup on Thursdays and pretended she had made too much by accident. Ben fixed the back gate. No one gave speeches. They just showed up. That is what real family does. It does not always know what to say, but it knows where to stand. In spring, Dad and I repaired the porch. Not because Marcus had broken it, because Dad wanted it white again. My mother always wanted it white, I said. Dad looked offended. It was white. It was peeling white. He considered that fair. Ben helped with sanding. Maya's brother helped with the railing. Mrs. Alvarez supervised from a lawn chair and said every man was holding the brush wrong. We painted until sunset. When we finished, Dad stood at the bottom of the steps and looked at the porch for a long time. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "This is different." To strangers, it probably looked the same. A small white porch on a yellow house. But we knew where the rot had been removed. We knew what had been sanded down. We knew what it cost to make something solid again. On the first anniversary of the night in the pantry, Dad and I sat at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee. The old brown mug was gone. I had broken it by accident in March. When it shattered, I cried harder than a mug deserved. Dad swept up the pieces and said it did its job. I asked what he meant. He said it held the truth long enough. That night, we did not talk much about Marcus. We talked about Mom, how she hid Christmas gifts in the dryer, how she once backed into the mailbox and blamed the wind, how she made Dad return that recliner because she said it would attract loneliness. We laughed until Dad wiped his eyes. Then he grew quiet. "I kept thinking I failed you," he said. I looked at him. "Dad, no, listen." He wrapped both hands around his coffee. I watched him. I knew something wasn't right. But I didn't want to push you away. I didn't want to become the bitter old father who hated his daughter's husband for no reason. "You didn't fail me. I should have said more. I wouldn't have believed you." He looked at me sadly. "Maybe." "No," I said. "Not maybe. I loved him. I had built a whole life around believing him. You could have shown me control and I would have called it stress. You could have shown me greed and I would have called it ambition. You could have shown me disrespect and I would have called it pressure." The truth hurt, but it hurt cleanly. Lies hurt forever. Dad reached across the table. I took his hand. "You waited until I could hear it myself," I said. His eyes filled. "I hated that you had to." So did I. We sat there hand in hand in the little yellow house Marcus had called a scrapbook. And I realized he had been wrong. A scrapbook is not worthless. It is proof. Proof that life happened before the person who tried to define you. Proof that love left fingerprints. Proof that memory can outlast manipulation. Proof that a family's legacy is not square footage market value or a company name on the side of a truck. Legacy is the porch light left on, the pancakes after disaster, the neighbor who notices crooked parking, the friend who asks one question at lunch and changes your life, the father who says pantry, now and trusts you to survive the truth. I live in my own apartment now. Small, second floor, no dishwasher. The cabinets stick when it rains. I love it. Every bill is mine. Every key is mine. Every quiet evening is mine. On Sundays, I go to Dad's house. We cook dinner. Sometimes Maya comes. Sometimes Mrs. Alvarez brings pie and pretends it was extra. Dad still labels leftovers with painter's tape. The porch light still comes on every night. And the house on Maple Street still belongs to Ellis Bennett. Not because of paperwork. Not because of recordings. Not because we won in some grand dramatic way. It belongs to him because a man who worked all his life for one small place deserved to grow old in it without being treated like an obstacle. And I belong to myself because I finally understood what my mother tried to teach me long before I had words for it. Love does not require you to become useful to someone else's ambition. Family does not mean handing your dignity to the loudest dreamer in the room. Respect is not something you earn by shrinking. And legacy is not what people can take from you. It is what remains when they fail. Marcus thought legacy was a name on a company truck. My father taught me legacy is a porch light left on for someone who still has the strength to come home. If you are listening to this and ignoring that small voice in your chest because you do not want to seem suspicious, difficult, unloving, or dramatic, please hear me. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to check the numbers. You are allowed to protect your parents. You are allowed to protect yourself. Trust is not closing your eyes and hoping love behaves. Trust is built in the light. Anyone who needs darkness to keep your loyalty is not protecting the family. They are using it. I was not weak because I stayed too long. I was human. I was not cruel because I left. I was awake. And if there is one thing I want you to remember, it is this. The people who truly love you will never ask you to prove it by abandoning yourself. So tell me in the comments, if you were hiding in that pantry and saw your husband put something in your father's coffee, what would you have done? Would you have stepped out immediately? Or would you have stayed quiet long enough to hear the whole truth? And do you believe family loyalty should ever cost a person their dignity?